The Human Aura, Book 1, Kuthumi. Chapter 1, The Perfecting of the Aura. As we commence these auric studies, let it be understood that the combined manifestation of body, soul, and mind creates around the spinal column and the medulla oblongata those emanations called by some the human aura and by others the magnetic force field of the body of man. Let it be understood by all who read that each individual in whom is the flame of life reveals himself as though he were to shout it from the housetops. All that he really is, all that he has done, and even the portent of that which he shall be, right in the force field of his being and in the magnetic emanations surrounding his physical form. The reading in depth of the human aura is no ordinary science. Those who would undertake to do so should understand that by a simple change in thought, the fountain of the human aura, which pours forth from its own orifice, can change its color, its emanation, its magnetic affinity, its complete identity. Yet at the same time, it may retain beneath the surface the capacities to poison the atmosphere of the individual or the auric emanation within by virtue of his failure to cleanse himself in heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, is more than a beatitude issuing from the mouth of the living Christ. It is a fiat of strength shining promised to all who behold it. We have pondered the great need of humanity for purification, and we advocate above all the purification of motive. But when individuals do not see clearly just what their own motives are, it becomes exceedingly difficult by reason of their own internal blindness for them to purify themselves. Therefore, the purification of the faculty of vision has been given top priority by the masters, because it has been our experience that when men learn to see as God sees, they perceive the need to correct their problems and in most cases do so without further delay. In the matter of our brotherhood, those unascended devotees who wear the golden robe of cosmic illumination, who in truth are illumined concerning the many subjects ordinarily hidden from the average seeker on the path, are expected to perform more advantageously in directing their lives according to the instructions issuing from their lips. A good example is the best teacher. Now, what is the object of humanity's desire to read the human aura? Is it simply to satisfy some quality of human curiosity, or do they find satisfaction in perceiving the wrongs of others without correcting their own? All who undertake this study of auric emanations and of the human force field as it pours forth into space should recognize the creative nature already existing in mankind. By the misuse of the creative nature, men have fabricated in countless lives undesirable and unwholesome conditions which plague their youth, disturb their elders, and in no way contribute to the growth of the quality of human life as originally envisioned by Almighty God. The hope of the world as the light of the world is to be considered. The world today emanates an aura not at all resembling the Christic aura of the universal Christ consciousness, and the bulk of the people remain in ignorance of the simplest cosmic truths, because the powers of darkness that are in the world have accomplished the distortions of the scriptures which they desired long ago. Man's interpretation of his relationship to the divine involves itself in pagan anthropomorphic concepts. God is seen as being appeased by sacrifice. Even so, men fail to understand the true meaning of sacrifice. In the case of the Master Jesus, because of the perfection in his nature which he clearly perceived, he did not require any propitiation for sin. Yet he is portrayed as one who is able to save to the uttermost those who believe in him. Those who understand the meaning of God, Christ, and life from a real standpoint see that there is no difference between the divine nature in Jesus and the divine nature in themselves. They understand that there is no partiality in heaven. All can equate with the image of the beloved Son. The 99 must be forsaken, for they already possess the strength within themselves to perceive this truth. And the one who is lost, caught in the brambles of confusion, blinded to his own reality and the inward radiance of the divine image, must now forsake the false doctrine of the blind leaders of his blindness. He must heed the voice of God and return to it. Through our auric studies that we are releasing herewith, we anticipate that many shall find their way back to the Father's house. There they will perceive that they must present themselves a living sacrifice unto God. It was never the Father's intent to collect penance from humanity, nor to exact a form of sacrifice as appeasement of his wrath. For the only wrath of God that is valid in the cosmic courts of heaven is that karmic recompense, that weight of sin which imputes to humanity the darkness they have created, acceded to, or acknowledged. In reality, man lives in a universe of light and purpose. To veil that purpose from man was never the intention of God. For he has clearly said, that which has been hidden shall be revealed. In this sense, then, the higher sense of releasing the divine knowing within man, who in reality is both the knower and the known, do we finally establish the reality of God within the consciousness of the individual, thus producing right there in man the perfection that he craves. It is amazing how by ignorance men are thwarted in their attempts to understand life, simply because they do not know, they do not find out. Therefore, as our beloved Master once said, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he has. He spoke of understanding. This most precious treasure we shall attempt to bequeath to you in our releases on the studies of the human aura. All who read should bear in mind that we cannot increase the knowledge of those who do not first invoke it from the throne of grace. It is of utmost importance that the student understand that there is a process whereby every observation of his five senses is transmitted automatically to subconscious levels within himself, whereby inner hieroglyph events he has witnessed or matters which he has studied are recorded. Thus, the entire transmittal of data from the external world to the internal lies in the akashic records of his own being. The process of recall, while quite involved from a technical standpoint, is almost instantaneous. Out of the storehouse of memory, man quite easily calls forth those treasures of being. Unfortunately, not all events are benign. Not all recordings are examples of perfection. The sorting and classification of these records is the responsibility of the body elemental and the recording angel of the individual life stream. You will find mention of the recording angels in the words of Jesus when he spoke of the little ones. For I say unto you that their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Each individual has such an angel representing the purity of the infinite God, assigned to his life stream by divine decree from the very foundation of the world. This angel has the ability not only to read the life record of everyone upon the planet, but also to commune directly with the heart of God, to behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Thus, the intent of God to reveal himself unto the angel of his presence attached to each of his children operates through the Holy Christ self in perfect harmony with the divine plan. How unfortunate are those who, while always perceiving the height and depth of man, are never able to become impersonal enough in their approach to endow the least of these my brethren with the quality of the living Christ. Men find it not at all difficult to believe that the fullness of the Godhead bodily dwelleth in Jesus, but they do find it difficult to believe that it also dwelleth in themselves. Yet this God has done. He has, in the bestowal of the Christ flame, placed the fullness of himself in every son and daughter. While the divine nature is properly understood, then how easily humanity can bring forth the anticorona, and thus begin the process of correctly weaving their life manifestation. Now, as man studies the science of perfecting the aura, he should also understand that through the misqualification of thought and feeling, many undesirable traits are brought into manifestation. Most dangerous of all is misqualification in the emotional body of man, in the feeling world, for thereby the heart is touched and in turn often sways the whole life record of the individual into a miasma of doubt and questioning. I do not say that the sincere student does not have the right to question or even to doubt, but I do say that once the truth is clearly presented to him, if the door of his heart be open, he will never doubt and never question the truth of the living God. He may not leap over the hurdle, but he will clearly perceive that it can truly be, that he will be able, that he is able to realize more of God than that which his present awareness allows. Let us free humanity by right knowledge from all that has bound them
and blinded them
to their own great inner power, to the treasure house God has locked within this consciousness. Now, I want to make very certain that all understand the misqualification in the feeling world, such as anger, self-righteousness, fear, hatred, jealousy, condemnation, and resentment, gives a certain leverage to the power of amplification. This is similar to the transponder system on your large aircraft. When the transponder button is pushed by the pilot, it triggers a signal from the transponder, which causes an enlarged blip to appear upon the electronic board of the airport traffic controller, thereby enabling the plane to be easily identified. Thus, do the emotions of mankind often falsely amplify misqualified thoughts and feelings to the point where a dominant position is assumed by those misqualified feelings. Although this takes place without the consent of the real being of man, nevertheless, darkness does then cover the earth. Yet Christ has said, I am the light of the world. I have given you many thoughts in my first release on the studies of the human aura. The brothers of the golden robe will joyously respond to the depth of his wisdom, which we shall receive in the completed series. From the archives of the Brotherhood, our love pours forth. Chapter 2, the susceptibility of the aura. Continuing auric studies, we examine the influences of the world upon the human monad. Man is a creature of simple design, yet complex in the externalization of that design. Little do men realize when first they ponder the nature of themselves, the ramifications of the consciousness of each individual. The influences of the world, the thoughts of the world, the feelings of humanity are easily transmitted consciously or unconsciously from person to person. And in the transmittal of thoughts and feelings, neither sender nor receiver has any guarantee that the patterns of his intent will be preserved intact. If the light that is in man that he transmits is undesirable, those who are easily made the victim of his thoughts and feelings are those who are naturally affinitized with him, may reproduce the effects of those thoughts and feelings in their own worlds. So many in the world today are victims of the thoughts of others, even thoughts from other eras, which endure because mankind have fed their attention and their energies into them. In effect, it can be said that man has endowed either his evil or his good deeds with a semi-permanent existence, and that the consciousness of good and evil partaken of by Adam and Eve, because it has been perpetuated by his free will, is living in man today. Yet through a return to the Edenic consciousness of God, man is able to find the tree of life, which is in the midst thereof, and to eat of the fruit and live forever. There is much that we shall transmit in our studies, but first we must ask that the students approach them with the right attitude in order that we may create a climate of the practical use of right knowledge. Through the ages that have passed, from spiritual innocence to worldly contamination, men have seldom observed the recycling process by which there have been regurgitated upon the screen of life a flood of undesirable qualities. Both world and individual problems have been prolonged entirely because of the vibrational patine of blackened and tarry substance with which man has coated his very being and then refused to surrender. It is time humanity began to examine themselves as individuals having a creative potential, which they may use to influence the auras of others, and which in turn makes them susceptible to influences from others, both good and bad. Thoughts of love, joy, and peace, divine thoughts created in the hearts of the saints and the angelic host, should never be avoided, but should be enhanced by the magnetic force field of the aura. Men can learn from one another, and their auric emanations can benefit from contact with those whose auras are filled with virtue. Because it is just as easy for the aura to absorb vice as it is to absorb virtue, the individual must understand how this process of thought and feeling transmittal can help or hinder him in his daily occupation. Because people are so completely unaware of the effects of the mass consciousness, as well as the mental pressures from neighbors and friends, we continue to stress the importance of using the violet transmuting flame and the tube of light as effective deterrents to the penetration of the aura by undesirable qualities and to their effects upon the mind and being. Needless to say, I am determined to transmit in this series definite information that shall make it easier for the soul within man to hold dominion over his life pattern, thus improving the quality of the human aura. Unless this be done, great pain and suffering will undoubtedly come to humanity, and that unnecessarily. The brothers of the Golden Robe, in their devotions and study of the holy wisdom of God, have recently considered that a clearer revelation of matters involving the human aura would make it possible for more individuals who are oriented around spiritual knowledge to be assisted and to assist others, hence this series. Now, without question, there are problems manifesting in the world wholly as a result of the individual's contact with the auric field or force field of embodied humanity. Therefore, defenses must be clearly shown. They must be understood at the level of the individual. In addition to that, methods of projecting the consciousness or the force field out of the physical body into others in one's immediate family or circle of friends must be understood and then effectively mastered as a means of sending hopeful light rays of cosmic service to those who, while in need of assistance, have no idea whatsoever that such possibilities exist. Although people are brought under the benign or harmful power of various auric manifestations and force fields, they do not understand how this is done, and many times they are unaware that it is being done. It is not a question of scientific marvel to them or one of strange phenomena. They simply do not know that it exists, but we do. Working effectively with this knowledge from a wholly constructive standpoint, the angelic hosts and brothers of the Golden Robe yearn to see the day manifest when humanity, one and all, will understand how they may use this beneficent force of the human aura in a correct and proper manner. For they will see that the aura is designed to be a reflector of good to all whom they meet and to the world at large. Those skilled in mortal hypnotism and seductive practices have a partial knowledge of the use of auric and force field projections, and they do achieve limited results that lend credence to their work in the minds of some whose goals are likewise limited. As our beloved Master Jesus once said, the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. In conference with us, beloved Jesus has made very clear that in making that statement, it was never his intention to see this condition prevail. Rather, it was his promise to all who believed in the Christ, greater works shall ye do, because I go on to my Father. Thus, it is the will of God that each generation should attempt to improve the quality of the abundant life upon the planetary body through every available means that is in keeping with the teaching and practice of the Christ. It has been our intent in these first two releases to give certain vital bits of information on our subject. Later in the series, we shall develop that understanding of our instruction, which, if correctly applied, can change your life and the lives of countless numbers among mankind, because they will be better able to appreciate and to follow the way of truth and the way of hope. Do you know how many individuals there are in the world today who, by reason of their ignorance on these very subjects, become the victims of the manipulators? Well, beloved ones, there are many, I assure you, and I do not want the graduates from our class to ever again be among them. Let me then go back to the basic principles of Ascended Master Law by citing for all the need to use your tube of light and the violet transmuting flame as the greatest protection you can ever have against the forces of manipulation. How very dominant, God-endowed, and beautiful are the fragments of divine knowledge that have been received by you thus far. Do you truly meditate upon them? Do you make them a part of your life? Or do you find them to be entertaining flowers that somehow the mind takes a fancy to? Beloved ones, I want to prepare you for a most tremendous piece of information, which I will transmit to you in a forthcoming lesson. But I want to make certain that when you receive this concept, which I will bring to you, you meditate upon it like a flower. Therefore, prepare yourselves in your meditations for this concept, which I assure you will give you a very concrete idea beyond the mechanical as to just how you can accomplish the purification of your aura. Without this knowledge that I am about to reveal, a great deal more time could very well elapse before you would truly understand the real freedom you have and how to use it for the blessing of all life. When you divinely apply the wisdom of the Great White Brotherhood to the correct manifestation of reality in your world, I am certain that the improvement of your aura and in the quality of your life will be very great indeed. Remember that I want you to be a flower, a rose, or a lotus, waiting in the swamplands of life to receive the precious drops of truth that heaven has prepared for you. If you will do this, I am certain that you will need no further proof of the reality of your being, of the unfolding kingdom that is within you, and of how you can take dominion over that kingdom as God intended in a way that is safe, sane, and correct. When there are so many books being written today, so many words being released into the stream of mankind's consciousness, which are almost a complete abortion of the divine intent, I must urge you to appreciate the opportunity we are releasing to you today. I remain devoted to your heart's light.
The human aura, the colorations of the aura. The reality of your God perfection, latent in all life, is continually releasing the current of its magnificence into your consciousness. Whenever an impediment blocks the flow of this magnificent God energy, it is as though an object has opaqued the light of the sun. As the sun has its corona, so there is always a spillover of the delightful radiance of the vital life forces in man, which are so easily subjected to his negative influences and misuse. This discolors the aura with negative vibrations and leads man to draw the conclusion that he is less than the perfection of God. Just as men recall on a cloudy day that the radiance of the sun is behind the clouds and can be seen from an aircraft which penetrates the clouds, so man should also begin to develop and maintain the habit of constantly telling himself that the blazing, dazzling reality of the fullness of God is being released to him moment by moment as the master plan of eternal purpose. Thus, he should develop the habit of counteracting all examples of shadow and misqualification by applying this principle of internal reality. What is real? What is real is released to man as he practices the ritual of penetration, of penetrating the light of the Son of God by the very power of the light that is within him, and thereby more and more of the divine radiance can infuse the aura in its manifest pattern. Therefore, today, the delight of the law of God will be in the mouth of the man or woman who will speak the living word, invoking from the heart of God that magnificence which he already is, claiming in the word, I am the fullness of the Godhead bodily in himself, as a joint heir with the universal Christ consciousness. Now, in the matter of the effects of one's thoughts and feelings upon the human aura, we shall briefly touch upon the subject of coloration. As the intensity of the white and the violet light is increased in the aura, especially those shades that are pale and ethereal, one notes the enlarging of man's perceptions and an increase in spirituality. As the pale yellow, almost golden light floods through the mind, the very fingers of cosmic intelligence manifest as interconnecting light rays, enabling the mind of man to contact the universal mind of God. By amplifying in the aura the beauty of pastel pink, vibrating fire of the cup of universal love, man is able to spill over into the world the very thoughts of divine love. As so many know, the color of violet, vibrating at the top of the spectrum, is transmutative and buoyant. Born to the purple, the man who so infuses his aura is cloaked in the invincibility of the King of Kings. This royal color is the cosmic fire of the Holy Spirit, which, when blended with the azure blue of the will of God, manifests as divine love in action in that holy will. The green light, eternally new with abundance, charges the aura of man with the power of universal healing and supply. To seal all in the will of God is to drink from the goblet of that holy will. In the electric blue of the ascended masters, it denotes both purity and power. Now, not all of mankind see the aura, and for some it is perhaps a misstatement to say that they do. What happens in most cases is a sensing by the inner being of the reader of the auric emanations of others and the interpolation thereof by the mind through the organ of vision. The impressions of the impinging aura carried over the nerve pathway as a result of the extension of the reader's consciousness into the domain of the magnetic emanation seem themselves to be seen, when in reality they are only felt. Vibrations of anger often register as crimson flashes, just as black is seen in the aura as the opaquing by negative thoughts and feelings of the otherwise natural release of the light of the presence through the being of man. Remember, beloved ones, that the tone of the divine aura is an extension of God, just as the mode of thinking and feeling is the extension of the human consciousness. The interference with the aura in its natural, pure state by the mortal consciousness and its misqualification of light create the negative colorations that are both seen and felt by the more sensitive among mankind. The muddying of the pure colors of the aura occurs whenever there is a mingling of the emanations of imperfect thoughts and feelings with the pure colors released through the prism of the Christ. This marked change in color and vibration is obvious to the trained eye. In this connection, may I say that one can learn to discern the thoughts and feelings of mortal men and to perceive what is acting in their worlds? The difference between momentary passions, consciously willed, and sustained, deep seated emotional trends must be considered. How easy it is to see through the process of auric discernment that which is not immaculate in someone's feelings, thoughts, or acts without understanding that only a temporary surface disturbance may have taken place. Much later, if that one is not careful to override such disturbances by retraining the mind and feelings and consciously governing the energy flow, an in depth penetration may occur, whereby auric contamination will reach subconscious levels and thus prolong the time span of man's indulgence in negative states. Great care should be exercised by all who desire to amplify the immaculate God concept of others to see that they do not, by their incomplete perceptions, actually intensify those negative conditions which those whom they would assist may not be harboring at all, but are only entertaining momentarily. Then, too, there is the matter of the projection of mass force fields of negatively qualified energy, which can become a patine or layer of substance overlaid upon the natural vibration of individuals. Although totally foreign to their force field, this overlay of darkness, if seen at an inopportune moment, may be diagnosed by the careless or untrained observer as an outcropping of the bedrock of his identity. Always remember, dear hearts, that those who fall in the swamp may come up covered with mud, for the quicksands of life, by their very nature, always seek to drag man down. But man can and does escape these conditions, overcoming through the same glorious victory that brings forth the lotus in the swamplands of life. I want you to understand then that by a simple act of invoking the light of the Christ consciousness, man can overcome the ugly chartreuse green of jealousy and resentment, the muddied yellow of selfish intellectualism, the crimson reds of passion, and even the almost violet black of attempts of self righteous justification. To see others clearly, beloved hearts, remember that man must first perceive in himself the beautiful crystal of cosmic purity. Then, casting the beam out of his own eye, he can see clearly to take the mote out of his brother's eye. By the purification of your perceptions, you will be able to enjoy the entire process of beholding the Christ in self and others, as one by one the little disturbances of the aura are cleaned up through the natural manifestation of the childlike beauty of cosmic innocence. What is innocence but the inner sense? And the poem of victory that God writes through man is already there in matrix and in creative form, waiting to be delivered upon the pages of life. Human density may have interfered with the manifestation of the Christ in man, but the light and love of the law will produce for him the greatest purification, making possible the penetration of the aura by the beautiful colors of the Christ consciousness. I should like our students throughout the world to join with me in a determined effort to let the crystal clear grace of the throne that is within you, as the threefold flame, three in one, hence throne, ray out into your world such ecstatic, electrical, cosmic energy that you will literally vaporize the darkened elements of your own aura and hence develop that magnificent seeing that will bring the joy of the angels and the light of God to all whom you meet. Perhaps you shall become more technical, but I think in no way can we become more practical than we have in that which I have already spoken. Will you follow the Christ of your being in this regeneration? The human aura, chapter 4, the reading of the aura. The trials of life that come to man are in reality his teachers. That is to say, they substitute for his teachers because he will not hear them. Yet it has been clearly recorded in the scriptures and ancient writings that the time would come when man should see his teachers and that they should not be far removed from him. So many today are concerned with the facial expressions and appearances of the teachers without ever realizing the lines of character and soul reality that comprise the inner being of a man or woman. Let the true seekers be concerned then not so much with the outer beauty of appearances, but with the inner beauty that produces those manifestations in the human aura which bring the admiration of every ascended master because they are the fulfillment of the God design. If any of you have ever been judges in a contest of beauty, you will understand the difficulty in making a selection from among the manifold aspects of God's beauty. In the case of the ascended masters and karmic lords, it is sheer delight that motivates them to pronounce their seal of approval on all that is the God intent in those who aspire to represent the brotherhood and to glorify God in their body and in their spirit. What a marvelous sport of possibility exists for every man. I want our students to think of the richness of the natural, radiating, consecrating devotion that God has placed within man. The opportunity to express the perfection of the Holy Spirit, when rightly apprehended, enables man to fashion the wedding garment of his very Christed being. Now, I know that through the years, many of the students of the occult have stressed the ability of the advanced disciple to read the human aura, to interpret it, and in effect to see it. May I say at this time, and quite frankly so, that no psychic ability or even the ability to read the human aura denotes in the person who does so that mastery by which the true adept overcomes outer conditions. I do not say that adepts do not have this ability. I simply say that the possessing of this ability in partial or even in total proficiency is not necessarily an indication of the advanced spiritual development of the individual. Also, it should be realized that those who profess to read the human aura may do so very poorly in a confused manner or in a very limited depth. In order to correctly interpret the reading of the human aura, one must be able to read the karmic record and to have some insight into the total being of a man. I would far prefer that the students would consider the benefit that can come to them through beholding good in themselves and in others, and through striving for the good, as my beloved cohort Elmoira has said. For the fruit of striving may not always be apparent on the surface, even on the surface of the aura, but it stands behind the real life record of man's attainment. This is why God has said, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." Here in Shagatsi, we concentrate on the sending forth of holy wisdom. We concentrate on harmony and on true loveliness. There are times, of course, when man must perceive that what is acting in his world is not of the Christ. It is then that he must be able to disentangle himself from his problems and to recognize that neither his problems nor the unwholesome conditions that surround him are the nature of God. Therefore, the Lord does not require him either to prolong his problems or to be weighted down by his environment. Might I add that by nurturing the divine nature, man finds that the aura will quite naturally resemble the presence in its radiant perfection. This is the pattern that appears in the heavens of God's consciousness, and that can appear in the heaven of every man's consciousness, for it flows out from the seed pattern of perfection within man, even as it manifests in the presence above. When Jesus said, I and my Father are one, he referred to the balancing of the divine radiance of the God presence and causal body within the outer manifestation, which through his reunion with reality had become one with God. Hence, the color rays, which had been focused through the coat of many colors, now became the nimbus, halo, or radiance of the Christ consciousness around him, the seamless garment that he wore as the Son of God. We have tried to make apparent in this discourse the fact that ordinary human beings are not endowed with this sense perception of the human aura, and this should always be borne in mind. Pilate heeded the dream of his wife, who warned him to have nothing to do with that just man, more than the testimony of virtue manifest in the one who stood before him. He could find no fault with Jesus Christ, but he did not bear witness to his perfection, else he would never have permitted the crucifixion of Christ, nor would he have turned him over to the Sanhedrin. The common sense approach to the realities of God is to be found in depth in the being of man. Man is a veritable treasure house of beauty and perfection when he returns to the divine image, and I know of no better way to produce the miracle of the star of divine radiance in the human aura than to become one with God. The seemingly impossible hurdle is the panacea man seeks, and he shall find it if he seeks diligently enough and does not fear to surrender his little self. For all human ills will be cured by virtue of his becoming the divine in manifestation. More harm has been done in the world by fraudulent readings of the human aura and false predictions based upon these readings than man is aware of. What a marvelous thing it will be when man turns his faculties of perception to the beholding of the reality of God in his very thought and standard. Now, I must, in defense of some arhats and advanced adepts upon the planet, affirm the accuracy of those who are able instantly to detect in depth the vibratory patterns manifesting in the world of others. It is incorrect to suppose that these will always speak out concerning their discernments. Naturally, gentleness and the will to see perfection supplant darkness will guide their motives and acts. But I solemnly warn here that whenever you are in the presence of a true adept or even an unascended being who has mastered many elements of perfection in his life, you should understand that if there is darkness of motive within you, he may see it or he may choose to ignore it. By the same token, I solemnly warn those who fancy themselves adepts, but who in reality have not overcome more than an iota of their imperfections, and who have achieved in the eyes of God but a small portion of that which they imagine, to take heed that they do not incorrectly discern in their so-called readings of the lives of others some quality that may not even exist, for thereby some have brought great karma down upon their heads. All should exercise humility and care in placing their value upon the development in the soul of the higher consciousness of the God presence. For this is without money and without price. It is the invincible attainment by which men become truly one with God. The human aura, the intensification of the aura. Man thinks of himself as solid. He lives within an envelope of flesh and blood that is penetrated by his consciousness. Consciousness must be regarded as man's connection with his source and its flexibility as man's greatest asset. Yet when wrongly used, it is his greatest weakness. The consciousness of humanity today is so easily influenced by banal and barbaric doings that the magnificent cosmic purpose heaven has prepared in the creation of man is seldom recognized, even minutely. Man so easily becomes involved in the trivial manifestations of the footstool kingdom. And his indoctrinations, being what they are, make him believe that the divine purposes and the doings of the ascended masters would not be to his liking. The singing of devotional songs, the chanting of holy mantras, the engaging of the mind in spiritual conversation and prayer to the Almighty are regarded today by the sophisticates as milksop endeavor, which could not possibly produce any good for them, but is reserved only for the weak-minded. May I challenge this concept in toto and say that the greatest strength, the noblest ideal, and truest valor is to be found in the aspirant, who ultimately achieves first his adeptship in his fulfillment of the divine plan, and then his eventual mastership in the ascension. Men erroneously think that only Jesus and a few other notable figures from the biblical centrum have ascended. How they would change their minds if they could see the cloud of witnesses above them in the heavens. It is time that men understood the effects of their consciousness and their thoughts upon the human aura. I would go so far as to say that even their opinions have a strong influence upon them for good or for ill. I suspect that many have decided that I do not intend to discuss the negative aspects of the human aura. Perhaps they are right. We shall see. I am interested in stressing how that grandiose aura of the Christed One, surging with light, radiates out a divine quality in its very emanation that carries healing, nobility, honor, and cosmic strength to all who come in contact therewith. This aura of which I speak is not, and never can be, the product either of man's environment or of his social involvements. It is produced by divine doings, by entering into the cosmic consciousness of God through involvement with universal purpose, and especially by contact with our brotherhood. There is still so much vanity, however, in the whole business of God seeking. There are times when we would gladly chasten men because of our great love for them, if doing so would stimulate a greater involvement in the only and true purpose behind the manifestation of their lives. Remember, the light shines in the darkness, and whereas the darkness comprehends it not, those who do not begin to open their understanding because this is their desire will find an absolute intensification of the light taking place within themselves. Hence, a great deal more spirituality is involved in the God flame within the heart of each individual than he at first realizes. In this very flame, man has a catalyst posited right within himself, a spark plug that can motivate him to make such attunement with his presence, whereby the magnificent influences of our brotherhood can shine through his aura and he can become the outpost of heaven upon earth. Whoever said and who dares to say that any one person has the exclusive possession of this quality when it is the divine plan for all to radiate the one light? Just as man and all things were made by one spirit, so the one spirit expects all to enter in at the door. The door of the Christ consciousness literally trembles with anticipation of the moment when the individual will joyously enter into the sheepfold of his own reality. Probably some of you may wonder just what I am driving at and why. When I have offered to you studies on the human aura, I seem to be going around Robin Hood's barn. I can understand that, and I feel that now is the time for me to tell you that by this method, I am seeking to develop a special quality in all of our students. That quality, which is of the Christ, will enable you to develop the kind of an aura that I will call self-proving, because it can be consciously intensified to do the most good. In effect, man's aura is literally a broadcasting station for God's energy and his cosmic rays. Energies of light and the very thoughts of God himself and of the ascended masters combine with the benign thoughts that emerge from the very life plan of the individual and are then beamed or broadcast in all directions into the world of form. Those who are sensitive and can attune with these waves may perceive their nature and their origin, while those who do not understand cosmic law may become beneficiaries of these wondrous energies without ever knowing their source. It makes little difference. We are concerned with overcoming the preponderance of human darkness that is abroad in the world today by literally flooding forth more light through the auras of many souls who shall dedicate their lives as outposts of cosmic regeneration to the planet. Christ said, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness. When we speak of the light of the world, we speak of the light of the aura, and we are talking about a tangible manifestation. It is difficult for me to restrain myself when I hear the thoughts of individuals who carelessly read my words and then say, what a nebulous concept he brings forth. Contrary to their opinions, my concepts are incisive and they are given with a very definite purpose in mind and directly in accord with the one law of God. I say this because I am talking about permanent manifestations of universal grace. And withal, I am trying to impress upon your minds the great fact that the law of God, the law of his love, is very much involved with the human aura. What is the human aura if it is not an extension into the world of form, into the universal web of the sum total of what the individual really is? Well, then, if a man manifests a whimsical attitude, working his own or another's will without discrimination, sometimes good, sometimes bad, or indifferent, can this be compared with the one who is literally harnessed to the divine dynamo and whose aura can be seen by those who truly see as beginning to vibrate with the universal purpose? Not only do I know that these states of consciousness cannot be compared, but I know that one day, in the changing consciousness of humanity, the former will cease to be altogether, for God will win. Of this I am certain. And those who follow the way of darkness because of the consuming of the thread of their own identity will ultimately be extinguished altogether by the very fires of creation. For God is the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer, and we have seen him in these and many guises. In heaven's name, from whence cometh energy? What is it that beats your heart? A wish obviously not your own, or it would not so suddenly terminate. Instead, the will of God, the desire of God, beats your heart. Men's lives would not be paltry, then, if they also let him determine their consciousness and their thoughts. Now that we have created a certain measure of understanding in many of our students about the factors that influence the human aura, we shall begin to show in greater detail the processes involved in broadcasting the qualities of the Christ, so that great good can flow from your being out into the world in these troubled times and create in the brilliance of the sunshine a new awareness that fulfills the destiny of the children of men under the cosmic teachers for this age. Extending my love to each of you, I hold the chalice of holy wisdom to be of special value in creating a new future out of which shall be born a greater summoning of understanding and its use. For knowledge must be correctly used and appropriated by transcendent magnificence rather than consumed on a few short years of sense pleasures without purpose. The brotherhood beckons to the many. The many can respond. If only the few do, I am certain we shall take delight in opening the curtain for them upon a new era of possibility. Let the weaving of regeneration begin anew the spinning of the tapestry of heaven's deepening, involvement in the raising of humanity into the folds of the brotherhood, into the delight of revealed purpose. I remain firmly established in that purpose. Chapter 6, the strengthening of the aura. The thrust for a purpose envisioned by Master Almoira should be brought to bear not only upon the activities of the brotherhood mutually coordinated on earth and in heaven, but also upon the life of each and every student. One of the first exercises I wish, therefore, to give to the students for the strengthening of the aura involves a threefold action. The student begins by visualizing the threefold flame expanding from within the secret chamber of his heart. He then seals himself and his consciousness in a globe of white fire, and when he is set, he proceeds to recite the following words with utter humility and devotion. I am light, glowing light, radiating light, intensified light. God consumes my darkness, transmuting it into light. This day, I am a focus of the central sun. Flowing through me is a crystal river, a living fountain of light that can never be qualified by human thought and feeling. I am an outpost of the divine. Such darkness as has used me is swallowed up by the mighty river of light, which I am. I am light. I live in light. I am light's fullest dimension. I am light's purest intention. I am light, flooding the world everywhere I move, blessing, strengthening, and conveying the purpose of the kingdom of heaven. I am light, glowing light, radiating light, intensified light. God consumes my darkness, transmuting it into light. This day I am a focus of the central sun. Flowing through me is a crystal river, a living fountain of light that can never be qualified by human thought and feeling. I am an outpost of the divine. Such darkness as has used me is swallowed up by the mighty river of light, which I am. I am light. I live in light. I am light's fullest dimension. I am light's purest intention. I am light, flooding the world everywhere I move, blessing, strengthening, and conveying the purpose of the kingdom of heaven. I am light, glowing light, radiating light, intensified light. God consumes my darkness, transmuting it into light. This day I am a focus of the central sun. Flowing through me is a crystal river, a living fountain of light that can never be qualified by human thought and feeling. I am an outpost of the divine. Such darkness as has used me is swallowed up by the mighty river of light, which I am. I am light. I live in light. I am light's fullest dimension. I am light's purest intention. I am light, flooding the world everywhere I move, blessing, strengthening, and conveying the purpose of the kingdom of heaven. As you visualize the cosmic white radiance around yourself, do not be concerned with the errors in your thought that through the years may have intruded themselves upon your consciousness. Do not allow yourself to concentrate upon any negative quality or condition. Do not let your attention rest upon supposed imperfections. Instead, see what the light can do for you. See how even your physical form can change, how a strengthening of the bonds of your health can occur in body, mind, and spirit. Try this exercise, simple though it may seem, and know that many ascended beings will be performing it with you. So many times adults fear to be thought childlike. They would rather appear to be worldly wise and sophisticated. If they only knew that they were running from deep-seated fears and insecurities that they have buried beneath the clamor of social doings. Surely, with all they know about the physical universe, their environment, and the patterns of the mind, they must be able to reveal how great they really are. But, dear hearts, what a shock some men and women are in for when they shall come face to face with the blazing truth of reality and realize that so much of what they have learned must be unlearned, and that what they have thought to be their own greatness must be sacrificed upon the altar of the true greatness of the Christ self. Then perhaps they will compare that which they do not yet know with that which they do know, and they will see how very lacking in luster they are in the eyes of the cosmic hierarchy. It is not needful to impress the masters with any quality you may have. Heaven knows exactly what you are, above and below. Heaven already knows that you were made in God's image and likeness. If you return to that image in a simple, sweet, and childlike manner, I can promise you that heaven will not allow you an overabundance of time in which to function in the domain of the child, but it will elevate you into the consciousness of a mature son or daughter of God. While you maintain the attitude of the child, you will be able to do something for yourself that will be both valuable and valid. You will be able to loose the ties that bind you to your egocentricities until at last the little bird of the soul shall flit into the heavens and behold the glory of the eternal sun. We in our brotherhood of the golden robe are devoted to the freeing of those who are yet immersed in the vain aspects of the human consciousness, that they may develop spiritually, free at last to express the purposes of life as God intends them to do, is our prayer. Many think it would be so nice if God would speak the word and suddenly, as with the rushing of a mighty wind, all could speak the heavenly language. Men forget the karmic patterns that others have carelessly woven, and even the patterns that they themselves have woven. They forget that these are the self-made prison walls that keep them from discovering the delights of heaven and from becoming gods among men. They do not understand that this planet is a schoolroom and that in these latter days many have permitted their consciousness to grow dark, even while knowledge seems increased across the land. The knowledge that is important is the knowledge whereby man becomes first the master of his own consciousness and then the master of his world. Whereas, in a relative sense, one man may attain greater mastery than another in the manipulation of energy within a finite circle. This in no way guarantees that the big frog in the little pond will be able to navigate in the circle of the infinite. We are concerned with the measure of man's advancement according to the divine precepts of the brotherhood, which have been established under the guidance of the Eternal Father from the beginning. We are interested not in generation, but in regeneration. Now, I am well aware that for some of our readers, it is even a new idea that their thoughts can impinge upon others, or that the thoughts of others can influence their own moods and manner of life. Nevertheless, it is so. The wise will therefore seek scientific methods of dealing with the problems of auric influences and thought penetration. If everyone knew how to use the tube of light and the violet consuming flame and believed in this method of self transformation, I am certain that the world would be a different place. The dissemination of such practical knowledge is invaluable when it is applied by those who receive it. Hence, I urge those disciples who have been calling for more light to be alert to properly use that which we shall release as they practice the aforementioned exercise. So many misalignments in the human aura, so many nodules of dark and shadowed substance continually spew out their pollutants into the mainstream of man's energy, sapping his strength and weakening the entire manifestation of his life, that there is a great need for the flushing out of darkness by a bubbling action of the light. Naturally, I am concerned that we first clear up these centers of shadow, the shadow of misqualification that is within man, before we energize the consciousness of our students. This problem sometimes presents a moot point, for those who pray often, who decree much, who love much, who involve themselves with the whole repertoire of the mantras of our brotherhood, seldom realize that as they gain in the power aspect of God, or even the love aspect of God, that they also need the holy wisdom that shall direct their proper use of their fort of energy. To misuse energy to send out enormous power into the world like billowing storm clouds is not the fulfillment of the divine intent. Energy should be directed as the perfect day coming from heaven into the lives of all it contacts. Let radiant blue skies and golden drops of sunlight pour through the foliage of man's consciousness, increasing the green, the beauty, and the color of the day of perfection in all men's thoughts. May I chasten some by pointing out that sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly, you are using the energy of God to further your own moods and feelings in the world of form. Try God's way, the way of perfection. For just as the Christ consciousness is the mediator between God and man, so man can become a joint mediator with Christ. And inasmuch as he does what he wills with the energy God gives him, he controls, in a relative sense, in the world of form, a portion of the divine energy for the entire planet. When he realizes this, the whole foundation of his life can be altered if he wills it so. This thought is injected as a direct quote from a conversation I had with beloved Moira, and I trust that the students will take it to heart. What a wonderful opportunity lies before you as a gift from God as you correctly use his energy. Why, you can literally mold yourself and the whole world in the divine image. The potential for goodness lying within man is wondrous indeed. And as he learns how to properly extend and guard his auric emanations, he will realize more and more of that potential. We shall do our part to make known the wondrous kingdom of heaven to as many as we possibly can. Will you help us reach out in God's name as his hands and feet to lovingly become more and more the manifestations of the grace of God? The auric cloud glows, the auric cloud grows. The beauty of the kingdom of heaven solidifies in man as he gains a greater understanding of his own real nature. I remain serenely in the light of purpose.